You're listening to Puma Podcast.
May kinausap na ako na tao. Sinabi ko sa kanya, kapag pinatay ako, patayin mo si BBM, si Lisa Araneta, at si Martin Romales. No joke. No joke. Nagbilin na ako, ma'am. Pag namatay ako, sabi ko, huwag ka tumigil hanggang hindi mo mapatay sila. And then he said yes.
Vice President Sara Duterte's increasingly volatile rhetoric and behavior have led to several criminal complaints and a subpoena from the National Bureau of Investigation. In this episode, I ask law lecturer and political analyst Michael Yusinko to make sense of these latest developments. I'm Bella Perez Rubio, Puma Podcast, and you're listening to Teka Teka.
Of course, the threats should be treated seriously. It doesn't matter actually if it was a joke or if it was done in jest or anything of that sort. No, of course, the moment a person publicly threatens the life of the president, then that automatically becomes a national security concern. So you just consider the other circumstances that this time the person making the threat is also the vice president, no? So that just adds on to the seriousness of the case, no, of the issue.
The already worsening feud between Vice President Duterte and President Marcos reached new heights this November when the VP and her team squabbled with authorities who were carrying out congressional orders to detain her chief of staff, Zuleika Lopez. Lopez was detained by lawmakers who accused her of obstructing their probe into Duterte's alleged misuse of confidential and intelligence funds.
The vice president is given a chance to express her side, explain what she said, and the NBI will evaluate, gather evidence, then pass this on to the DOJ. DOJ again will study it and determine if a case should be filed in court. So that is the way it should be done, no? Compared to what happened during the previous administration, where they just arrested somebody without any warrant, etc., etc. So it's good that the NBI and the DOJ learned their lesson and now they're doing it the right way. So what's important for our listeners to know is that the vice president is not immune from suit. So only the president has that privilege, not to be immune from any kind of suit during his term. No? So the vice president and all the other public officials, they are not immune from suit. But just like the president and the Supreme Court justices, the vice president can only be removed from office by impeachment. So removal from office, that's a different thing from being criminally liable for crimes. No? So that aspect, the vice president has no immunity from that.
There is no certainty that Duterte will be impeached, nor for that matter, convicted. On November 29, the same day that Duterte failed to appear before the NBI, President Marcos himself confirmed that he had instructed lawmakers not to pursue an impeachment case.
This is not important. This does not make any difference to even one single Filipino life. So why waste time on it?
Although Marcos thumbed down moves to impeach the vice president, he also made it clear that she crossed the line when she made those threats.
Nakakabahala ang mga pahayag na narinig natin itong mga nakarang araw. Nandyan ang walang pakundangang pagmumura at ang pagbabanta ng planong ipapatay ang ilan sa atin. Kung ganun na lang kadali ang pagplano sa pagpatay ng isang presidente, paano pa kaya ang mga pangkaraniwan na mamamayan? Yang ganyang kriminal na pagtatangka ay hindi dapat pinapalampas. Yan ay aking papalagan.
More on the possible consequences of Vice President Duterte's threats after a quick break.
You mentioned earlier that it doesn't really matter how she meant it, right? If she was joking, if she was not joking, it still follows that the NBI has to investigate what she said. Can you expound a little bit more on that? Why does it not matter if she was joking or not?
Doesn't matter from the perspective of the NBI. In other words, the fact that those words were said, that should be cause for an investigation by the NBI or the police for that matter. The circumstances or the intent behind it will only matter at the stage of the DOJ. When this case gets to the DOJ, then the explanation of the vice president why she said those things will matter with regards to determining what charges should be filed against her. No? So her intent will matter only in that sense. No? So the DOJ can say, oh, it was said in jest, and therefore maybe just a minor offense is involved here. But again, that has to be proven by evidence, right? Kasi sinabi niya, no joke eh. She said no joke. So based on that, then maybe saying afterwards that it's not a joke, the DOJ has to evaluate the evidence that is presented before them, both by the NBI and by Vice President Duterte herself.
And there's also talk that she might also face charges under the anti-terror law. I guess one, how likely do you think that is? And two, I guess, how do you parse all the discussion of that being poetic justice, fitting irony, and all of that, considering the many fears that still surround the anti-terror law and, her father's close involvement with having that law passed?
It's a good question. So first, for me, having studied the anti-terror law from the very beginning, from the time that it was being evaluated and studied as a bill, I don't see it being applicable in the vice president's case. Because when we try to ascribe terrorism to a particular crime, right, or a criminal act, we're looking at something like criminal person or a criminal group that is similar to groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, or the Proud Boys, or the other neo-Nazis group, or Abu Sayyaf, Jamaat. These are what we call terrorists, right? And their activities are described as terrorism. It doesn't seem to that those circumstances, they're not present in this situation. No, in the case of the vice president saying those threats to the life of our president. No, so I don't think the anti-terror law is applicable in this situation. I mean, it seems to me just a regular crime being perpetrated here. So now, as far as the irony is concerned, oh yeah, the irony punches you in the face, no? Na we were all afraid of the anti-terror law being used irresponsibly, right? Like what's happening now to the vice president, no? So the irony really is biting, right? That we were all correct to say that it can be abused. It can be used irresponsibly because of the way it was crafted, right? That any criminal act can be classified as terrorism in order to persecute a political enemy or an undesirable ally. So the irony really, it's biting, and hopefully our lawmakers realize that too.
Do you perceive a thread of coherent thought or strategy behind all of the inflammatory speech, especially the threat and now possibly going to court? Like, is there an upside in all of this for her?
I don't think there is a strategy behind it, no? But certainly there is coherence in the sense that this is consistent with how they conduct their politics. So it's coherent in their own way. But whether there is a long-term strategy behind it, probably not. So there is coherence because this is the way they conduct their politics, very much driven by emotion, by sentiment, which they try to execute or they try to implement through various means, through manipulation of media, manipulation of social media, through legal processes like filing cases in court, and also through other political strategies like mass action in front of the EDSA shrine. So these are all part of the way they conduct politics. But to say that this is part of like a broad long-term strategy to achieve a certain goal, maybe not.
That's interesting that you say that because if we're going by her father, it always seemed like there was no strategy on his part, at least on a surface level, right? And he was prone to lashing out a lot as well when he was president, and it always seemed to work out for him in the sense of his popularity, his allies standing by him. I mean, he left office very popular. Do you think that it will go as well for her as it did for him?
Yeah, that may be the critical difference here, that the vice president may not gain the same kind of privileges or benefits as her father did. So the end result may be different for her. So that's, I think, is the critical difference, that President Duterte's charisma, his instincts, and the way he carries himself, and of course his also his reputation and also his legacy, quote unquote, they're not transferable right, to his daughter. So his daughter now is trying to perform the way he did, but may not have the same gravitas that he had, and therefore the end result may be different this time.
That was today's episode of Teka Teka. Again, I'm Bella Perez Rubio. If you're curious to see how Filipinos are processing this feud, you might enjoy another conversation I had with pollster and political scientist Cleve Arguelles. We'll leave that link for you in the show notes. Anthony Tobias edited this episode, and our executive producer is Jill Caro. Thanks for listening.